name's Brian Fleetwood. I was actually born in Liverpool down by the docks. I was born in Brick Street actually. The first memories of my life are when I was in a convent called Our Lady's Greenfield in St Helens. I was sent there when I was 6-7 months old. I spent the first 4 years of my life there. Quite pleasant from what I can remember. Don't really remember my parents from an early age. In fact, I don't even remember them from up until the age of about 10. One of the main things I remember about Greenfield was that there was 3 of my sisters with me, Eileen, Margaret and Sheila. Michael was there as well, but I did very seldom got to see Michael. The most traumatic thing about being at Greenfield was when I was discovered to have had ringworm, which is like a disease of the scalp, where the nuns cut your hair off and then put plaster on it. It is then left for a couple of weeks and you go back into the clinic and they just tear the plaster off, which is a very, very painful thing to be done to a child. And then more plaster is put on, because if you get a positive, you have to have the plaster put back on for another 2 weeks. And this went on for a number of weeks until I got 3 negatives. I was going to school down at the convent. I quite liked it, but when I would always remember the end of the war. We were walking down to the school and all the kids were throwing bricks in the road, because every time the truck went past we thought they were the Germans surrendering. It was quite funny actually, but that's the way it was. I didn't really know anything. And one day, without any warning, I was taken from Greenfield and sent to St Edward's Orphanage. I suppose you could say that was the start of a bit of a hard life for the next 6-7 years. A life of pain, a life of feeling not wanted, a life of being probably the scruffiest lad in Liverpool, along with a lad I met. We used to call him Jog and Porky Sefton, 2 of them. Porky became a good mate of mine because we were both at the same age, same backgrounds. And when I went to St Edward's, that's really where I first learned to start fighting. I'd only been there a day or 2. And I was just sitting on the grass messing about with a bit of a piece of wood, digging it in the ground and whatever, when another little lad came over and started pushing me about because I was a new kid. I remember crying, and I found out that I had 3 brothers in the orphanage who I'd never seen before. I went over and started talking, well, like any little kid would, and I was told to get over there and sort him out. Not exactly in them words, they didn't speak like that in them days, but I was told, you got to go and fight, you can't let people push you about. So I went back over to this kid and I started hitting him. Not punching him, it was just, I was only a kid, I was only just over 4 years of age. And we were rolling around like a couple of cats more than anything, scratching and crying at each other. And that was the start of me learning how to fight. It was
And you became a good fighter though.
Hey?
And you became a good fighter.
I became a good fighter, if you can call fighting good. It was the start of a lifetime of hardship. I remember going to do my first confession in the church when I was 7 years of age, and they had all these holy pictures on the side on a little shelf. And while I was making my confession, I was looking at them, and then I took a couple of them off the shelf and put them in my pocket. I went upstairs. When I got out of the church, I went across to we used to call them cottages, but they were about 3 stories high, and there was about 150 kids in each cottage. There was 3 cottages. I was in the Sacred Heart, which was the first one. Then there was St Joseph's, and then there was Our Lady's. And each cottage is all the kids were of the same age. Where I was, it was 5 till you were 10 or 11. And then St Joseph's, where you were there till you were 15, 16. And then St Joseph's, where you were there till you found somewhere to live and you had to leave the place. Quite a big farm at St Eddie's. Yeah, it was a big farm. They had Shire horses there. I always remember them. But the most thing I remember was really learning to look after myself. There was no one there to back it up. I didn't even know what parents were at the time. I'd never really bonded with my parents because I just didn't see them. They never ever came to visit me. I don't recall them coming once in 10 years to come and visit me. And that was the first 10 years of my life. So you can imagine what I was like. I didn't respect anybody. I wasn't bothered about anybody. It was a feeling of me virtually against everybody else. I wasn't bothered. I didn't feel like that at the time, but as I look back on it, I can see I started to feel like that. And I started to become a bit of a fighter. I went down to the school in the village in Huyton. I can't remember the name of the village. I think that was called Our Ladies as well, the same as the one at Carmel Dam. And always had to wear short pants with the orphanage. I remember going into this place, this school, and some of the kids had long trousers on. And as usual, as being a new kid again, kids start to see what you like and poking you and this, that and the other. It wasn't just me there, there was quite a few other kids from St Eddie's that went to the school. But when it's your first term in the school, you do tend to get picked on a bit, so I started to throw my weight about a little bit and started hitting back. When I started hitting back, I realised that, people stopped hitting you. People started backing off. We're kids, when I say people, we're kids, they're only kids, the same as myself. But I learned really quickly that once you threw a punch, or whether it was a punch or a slap, people seemed to back off. And because I didn't have parents or anybody else to tell me how to act as a kid, I started to use that to my advantage. And I became cock of that place, that school. In a quite short time, I reckon it was by the time I'd been there for 12 months, I was pretty much, I won't say running the school, but nobody came near me. I was always known as Fleety as well. They called me Fleety instead of Brian or Fleetwood. It was always Fleety because I loved running as well. And at the sports stage, people thought I was a good runner, and I didn't look upon it. I always thought about running as chasing someone or chasing a cat or chasing a dog or something. It was always, that's what I ran fast. But that's really where my life started. I found out really that my brothers didn't really want a great deal to do with me because they had enough to look after themselves. As I say, the orphanage held about 400 people, 500. Well, I keep saying people, but they were actually children and young lads. And I wasn't allowed home. I used to go home over a weekend on a Saturday, just for one day. And in Upper Parliament Street, because we moved from Brick Street to Upper Parliament Street. And I was allowed home for the first 2 years I was in the St Eddie's. I was allowed home on a Saturday, but that only lasted for about 2 months. Then I got called into the office by one of the brothers, because they were brothers, African brothers they were called, and they called me into the office and said to me, "You're not to go home anymore on a Saturday." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because your mother and father have said they can't afford to have you coming home on a Saturday and having to feed you and this, that and the other." So I never ever went home again until I left the orphanage. And that's another thing. When I left that orphanage, I was quite a bit of a scrapper. Did a bit of boxing in the orphanage. At least they taught you how to look after yourself, as well as learning for yourself. You were taught a bit of boxing. And when I went home for good, I thought it was going to be amazing. Wow, what a mistake that was. That was a start of probably the worst years of my life. That was when I started getting beaten up. I remember one day It was on my birthday, the day before my birthday. It was on a Sunday. My birthday was the following day. In this house where we lived, where my mum lived, there was only a gas mantle downstairs. There was no electricity in the place. And when I first went there, when I left the orphanage and went down to live in this house, I had a post office savings book given to me by the orphanage, which had 2 shillings and 6pence in it. It was all in sixpences, all stamps. And I had some nice clothes which they'd given me to go home in. I was all excited until I got to 275, which was the number of the house where my mum and dad lived, and my family, brothers, sisters. That's really when I met them all. And I was shown up to the bedroom, if you can call it a bedroom. And I must have been really traumatised, because on the first night of going to sleep, going upstairs in the dark, going into this room with my brother Michael, I was terrified. No lights to put on, everything was done in the dark. And that's when I started wetting the bed. Never wet the bed, ever, until I went to that house. And that was the start of a very traumatic period in my life. I remember going into I used to go to church on a Sunday at the St. Eddie's, and I was obviously still going to church when I came home. I came home when I was about 10 or 11. And I remember going into my brother's bedroom for something or other, and I seen all these half-crowns on the mantelpiece by the fire. He was in the army at the time, John. He was in a parachute regiment. And I remember picking 2 half-crowns up and putting one in each pocket so they wouldn't rattle. And then I went off to church, St. Bernard's in Crown Street, Kingsley Road. And when I came back, I went downstairs. It's a Sunday morning. I went downstairs because I used to get boiled fish. I didn't get, you never got much. I just got a little piece of boiled fish and a piece of bread, and that was my breakfast on a Sunday. I was very lucky actually, because I didn't get anything any other day. And my brother grabbed hold of me, or my mum, as we used to call her. My mum grabbed me and said, "Come here." Started searching me, and she pulled a half-a-crown out of one pocket and then half-a-crown out of another. And my brother started laughing. He said, "Oh, that's clever, isn't it? One in each pocket so they don't rattle." And I didn't think anything was going to happen. I just said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And next thing I got a crack right across the face. Then the stick came out. And that was the first time in my life that anyone had ever beaten me up with a piece of wood, cane, a bamboo cane. I got battered, and when I say battered, I mean battered. And not one of those members of my family stood up for me, not one of them. And there must have been about 6 or 7 of them in that kitchen downstairs. The basement, we lived in the basement then. That's where all the meals were done. I got battered for quite some time. I was aching, screaming. I got thrown out into the back, if you could call it a kitchen, where we used to get a wash. And there was a sink there, and I was told to get a brush and scrub the floor. The floor was just flagstones. It was a slum. You wouldn't put children in a place like that these days, but that was a slum there. I hated every second of being in that house. And when I went out in the back, I had to start scrubbing that floor. I was crying. I cried all day long, because every time I scrubbed the floor, a bucket of water was thrown over it, and I was told to clean it again and clean it again. There was no hot water in the house, by the way. It was all just cold water. And I'd scrub it again. And sometime in the afternoon, my brother Vinny came into the kitchen, and I hadn't even noticed that there was a rat by the wall eating whatever it was eating something. And it wasn't even afraid of me. And then Vinny said, "Oh, look at that thing there." And he picked the strut and he threw a swipe at this rat, and he hit it, caught it, nearly cut it in half. I just felt sick. Anyway, by this time, it must have been about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I hadn't had anything to eat. And I was terrified by that time to ask for anything. And I went to go into the front room to say that I'd finished scrubbing the floor again. And I was told to get upstairs, which meant get to bed, if there was a bed. That's another thing. I never had a bed to sleep on. I slept on a door. People would think you were absolutely mad. And they slept on the door because I wet the bed. They made me sleep on the door because the wee got soaked up in the wood on the door and in the panels on the door. And it wouldn't go on. I didn't go on the floor. There was no blankets. There was nothing like that. It was just overcoats, old overcoats. I'd gone from being quite a well-dressed kid in the orphanage to being probably the scruffiest lad. Apart from the kids in Windsor Gardens, where I really made a name for myself around there. I remember going to the school, Marmaduke Hall, on my first week home. I went home on a Friday, and on a Monday I went to Marmaduke Hall. Went into the classroom, got introduced there. I had short pants on. I was the only kid in the school at the time with short pants. Everybody else used to wear dungarees, and they were what they called, they call them jeans these days, but them days it was called dungarees. And I had a pair of boots on, a pair of socks, an old pair of trousers, an old shirt. Never had a jacket. Never had a jacket going to school. All the time I went to school. My clothes had been taken off me, along with me 2 and 6. And I'd been pawned, taken to the pawn shop. I'd never heard of a pawn shop until I went to live in 275. And I wore these old clothes. And of course, when I went into the classroom in Marmaduke, I should have been going to the secondary modern school, the junior school, because they only had them in Marmaduke Hall till you were 10, and I was just, nearly 11. And that was when I really, really took to fighting, and I really started to enjoy it because it was a way of revenge for me.
Yeah.
I went to that school, and there was a fellow there, I didn't know his name at the time, but when we went out on the playground at 10 o'clock, I didn't know anybody, obviously, and I just stood by the railings, and about 4 or 5 of them came over to me, and this quite chubby fella came and started saying, "Oh, you haven't got a mum and dad, you haven't got this and this," and I was just looking at him, I didn't know what to say, and he started poking me, and I said, "Hey, stop it, you can't do that, stop it." And he said, "Why are you wearing short pants? Are you a sissy?" And that word sissy stood with me for a long time. And I said, you have to stop hitting me, I haven't done anything. And he gave me a little slap across the face. It wasn't a hard slap, just a slap across the face that kids do. But to me, it was a red flag to a bull. And I took off on this fella. I really did take off on him, and I gave him a hiding. I got dragged up before the headmaster. It was my first day in the school. I couldn't believe what was happening. But I was always taught in the orphanage by all the other lads that you don't tell tales. And if you're fighting, you're not a kicky horse. That was the word they used. You're not a kicky horse. You don't kick anyone. You fight with your fists. Which I did with this Fagan. And I don't think he knew what had hit him. And I got told off. I went sent home. And I wasn't very good at reading and writing, but they gave me this note to take home, and on it they wrote to me mum, telling her what had happened, and that was really the first hiding. I won't say hiding, but I got a whack at the cane, this, that, and that. That's what they always used to punish you with, was a cane, and that was when I know it's an old cliche, but that's when it all kicked off. Then that's when I started thinking for myself and trying to look out for myself, not realising that every time I made a move I was going to get a hiding. It was a terrible, terrible upbringing I was getting, and I was only at the start of it. I remember...
This is all at Upper Parliament Street?
This is all at Upper Parliament Street. 275. Yeah, it was just an old house belonging to some old fella. He had a second-hand shop next door.
It's all luxury flats now, isn't it?
Oh, They got knocked down. 268 is luxury flats. That was when we moved across the road. That was 12 months after I got to 275. Went across to 268. But in that 275, it was the worst. I never lived in a house like that before. I kept getting hit for various things. I was made to go on all the messages. I had to go on. If I went on one message to a shop, you can guarantee that I would be taken back to the house, go back to the house, and all the stuff over that I'd been on taken for the message, and I'd be sent straight back out to the same shop to get something else, and it happened like that all my life. Or no one would ever send me out for 2 things, or 3 things, or 4 things. I'd go and get this, and then they'd think of something else. Go and get this, go and get that, up and down, up and down. But I always ran, so it made me quite fit.
Yeah.
And I always remember after I'd robbed that money, the 5 shilling, 2.5 crowns, after I robbed that, things just got worse. Things just got worse. No matter what I did, I got that cane always stood in a corner, and I just hated going downstairs. I tried to stay out of that house as much as I could. It was to me, it was like I didn't know what a prison was, but it was very much like a prison. After I'd had a fight with Fagin on my first time at school, I mean, I'm getting it all mixed up in sequences because I robbed the 5 shilling about 5 or 6 weeks after I'd fought with Fagin and beat him. And I just realised that what I did, I was going to get smacked with that cane if I said anything out of order, if I said anything at all, or answered back. That cane was going to come right across my legs or across my back. And no one was going to stop it, no one. Michael was all right, because he was only 12 months older than me. But he'd passed his 11 plus in the orphanage. And we was going to De La Salle school. So that took him virtually out of my life from then on, because he went to school early. I used to have to get up at 6 o'clock and go and get a loaf every morning, every single morning. They couldn't buy a loaf at night. Don't know why. It always had to be me go out at 6 o'clock in the morning, get me off my door and go down. I must have been stinking of urine all the time, but I didn't know at the time. I just didn't know because I was only a kid. I suppose kids like the homes, but I hated that place with a vengeance. Couldn't wait out. When I thought I couldn't leave school till I was 15, it used to break my heart. I was like, I've got to be here for all them years. I'm going to get battered out this time. And it was just a terrible, terrible place to live. It's you couldn't explain it to anyone. All the beatings for nothing. Beatings, getting beaten up for nothing.
Sure, there's plenty of people who can relate to, without doubt, your era.
I should imagine that there'd be a lot of people that could relate to. When I got my clothes taken off me and given all these scruffy things, I fitted in. That was probably the best thing they did for me, because if I'd have gone to school or anywhere like that with nice clothes on, well, I would have had the whole school jumping on me. But everyone was pretty much the same. And I was a good footballer. I used to play football in the orphanage, kicking the ball around everywhere and this and that. I became pretty good at it. Football and fighting, that was the 2 things I was quite good at. And of course, when I started playing football in school, when the kids started getting to know me, and they know they couldn't touch me because I could fight. Cock of the school at my age. It was unbelievable. And but it gave me an in. It gave me an in because all the other kids then started letting me play football with them and all the rest of it. And I started getting picked first, whereas I was getting left to the last. And suddenly I was getting picked first.
Because they're all scared of you.
Yeah, they were. It was a terrible thing, but I took a delight in it because I always got battered, so there was no reason why nobody else should get battered as well. It was just the way it was. But it was a terrible, terrible situation to be in for any child. I didn't think so at the time, but as it went on, especially when we moved over to 268, which is a big posh house. It was posh compared to what we were at 275. 275 had no electricity, just had a mantle, gas mantle in the basement. no other lights anywhere in the house. Had candles, people walking around with candles, trying to light the place up. We couldn't have a candle because we were right up the top of the stairs, right at the top of the house. And broken windows. It just sounds like it's all an exaggeration, but it's all
Dickensian. It sounds Dickensian to me.
It was broken windows. It was cold up there, and you do get used to the cold after a while. So I had these overcoats on, and there was no money. There was never any money in the house. Everyone, pretty much skint. I remember one day, just after trouble. I just got home. I always had to run home so that I could change the accumulator for the wireless, because we had one of these things with a battery. The battery was like an accumulator with all had acid in it. I had to take it up to the top of Parley and get it changed. I think it was 106, shilling 6 and 7.5p. To get it changed, the battery changed, and bring it back down. Just as I was going up the stairs, there's a knock on the door, and my mum was looking up the basement, up the window, and she said to me, "It's the rent man. Go and tell him I'm not in. I'll be hiding in the cold place." So I went upstairs very innocently, and he said, "It's the rent man." I said, "My mum said she's not in. She's hiding in the cold place." I said, and he come down the stairs and he opened the door, and I knew immediately that what he'd done. I thought, I'm going to get battered, and well, I did get battered. It was the cane came out when he went upstairs. She said, "Oh, the door just slammed shut on me," and when he'd gone, I got that cane again. Oh. Yeah, it was one of them things where you always knew that cane. Me and Sheila. You
got your wits about you after that.
Oh, I had my wits about me, all right. I became fast. I became sly.
Yeah.
Me and Porky used to go down to the docks. Because I didn't get very much food. There was never anything there. There was always, for me tea, I used to get a piece of bread and margarine, and it was always Echo margarine. It was horrible. It was like eating grease.
What year was this then?
Well,
50s?
49, 50s.
You're still on rations?
There's still, everything was on ration, everything was, I used to have to take the coupons up to get it in thing. I had one thing going for me when I was that age, is that I learned pretty quick, and I've been doing it all my life. I always realised that when you went past all these shops, if you look down the grid, they had big grids where they used to drop the goods down, and there was always a penny or a sixpence or a threepenny bit or something like that down in the grid, but you couldn't lift the grid up because it was chained down into the cellar, so you couldn't lift it up. And the people who owned the shops used to go, when they went down, they'd get all the coins that had been dropped, accidentally obviously, and they'd pick them all up, and then they'd open the grid so that they'd get the goods dropped into the cellar, and then they'd fasten it up again. And then, obviously, whenever they get more goods in, they'd pick any pennies or, And I thought, I know what I'll do. And it was all by accident. I was coming out of the shop, and I stood on a piece of chewing gum, and it stuck to my foot. And I was trying to get it off. So it was like eating rubber. And I thought, if I put that on a piece of wood, I could stick it down there and that stick them coins to it. So I ran home, ran down the entries to all these houses, and I was looking over the walls in the houses, just to jump up on top of the walls. The walls were about 8 foot high. I had to climb up onto the top of the wall, see if they had a brush in the yard or anything like that. And I got a brush, pinched the brush out someone's yard, got it, snapped the head off it, put my chewing gum on the end of it, and I went back like as though I'd just made myself this brand new weapon. And I went around, and I was, no. I'll tell you what, I made a few bob out of that. I sure did. Going around, sticking it onto the pennies. If I got a silver shilling out of one of them grids, I was absolutely delighted, because I didn't get any pocket money. There's no such thing as pocket money. But yeah. And with becoming a good footballer in the school, we actually won the Echo Cup. And I passed the ball. We played at Anfield. And when I told my dad and everybody that we'd got to the final of the Echo Cup, and I was playing at Anfield. I got a smack, you little bloody liar. And the priest used to come round. Yeah, the priest used to come round on a Friday to collect money. They put money on plates now, but in them days, the priest used to come round to the house on payday and get money off all the parishioners. And when the priest come, I happened to be there Friday, because Thursday and Friday were busy days for me, running up and down the street, taking messages and coming back and this, that and the other, getting chips and getting all the food for everybody else, and starving myself, always trying to pinch a chip out of the packet and all that, because I knew I wasn't getting any. And the priest come, my dad's saying to the priest, he said he's playing at Anfield and you're in the final of the Echo Cup. Now, you should be telling him, he shouldn't be telling such lies. And the priest said to him, well, they're in the Echo Cup final. He's the fullback, Brian's a fullback, your son's a fullback.
What did he say?
He just sat down and just looked at me and turned his back on me. And that was me, that was all the congratulations I got. And I did, I played at Anfield, I played there. And we won. Oh. We played St Patrick's, which was in down by Scotty Road, and we beat them. And that was an amazing thing. Eh?
You've seen all the photographs as well with the teammates.
Yeah.
With the ball, the old leather ball.
Yeah, that was the. And the fellow in the middle, I'm on the end. The fellow in the middle was Fagan.
Was it?
He became a mate of mine because he couldn't beat me. 3 fights I had with him. 3 fights, and I beat him in every single one of them. Every one of them. I never got beaten in fight while I was, I only ever got beat once in my whole life apart from, I got more beatings off my mum than I got off anyone. It's terrible.
And you could never get back.
I think that's what made it so bad, was the fact that no matter what anybody said about me, my mum believed them. I remember some kid, a girl and her mate, walking down Overbury Street. I was coming home from school and I was running home, short pants on. I was running home and I just flicked the hair over her head, just flicked it because she had like a ponytail on. And she came, and she knew who I was. I didn't know she knew my sisters. And she came round to the house, she said, he just pulled my hair, and my mum battered me. Oh. Absolutely. But I said, I didn't pull her hair, I just flicked it. And she said, he pulled my hair. And I said, I got hiding. I absolutely got hiding. And it was around about that time that I got my shoes had worn out, so I never got another pair of shoes. I got a pair of baseball boots, sort of pair of pumps, but I had to take them off when I'd finished doing the messages. I used to go to school until 4 o'clock, and I'd go, and around about 4:30, 4:45, I'd be finished the messages, because all the shops then were all around the street, just up the road. They weren't far away, but when you're up and down there all the time, one after one, it really, you get shattered. But we have to take my shoes off then, my pumps, and I used to keep my boots for going to school then. And I went out, we had to be in at 8:30 every night, and I went out, and they used to go around the houses giving free coupons, soap coupons away, a penny off this, a penny off that, a halfpenny off this. And we used to follow the fella around here, I'd have a sack on, and he'd be pushing the coupons in the door, and they'd be sticking out, and I'd be going around behind them, pinching them up, pulling them all out, because there was a fella in the shop who'd give you sweets for the coupons. And I went to this fella's shop to buy these sweets with all these coupons that I'd nicked. And I had my dad's shoes on. He didn't know I had them on. But I crept down the stairs and got his shoes on and I went out, because that's what he used to do. He used to creep out at night and go and do things. And he had about size 8. It's like wearing flippers. And I was becoming was really streetwise after about 12 months. And this fella, when I went to this shop to get these sweets, I said to Porky, he said, what's in that box, that jar there? He said, I think it's called a charity box. He said, there's money in that. I said, is there? He said, yes. So I grabbed it and ran. I ran out and I ran down to the Tennies, Windsor Gardens. And this fella was chasing me. And like an idiot, I kept running with the box in my hand, and I was rattling away. Even if I had got away from me, he'd have heard where I was running, because he'd heard the rattle, he just followed the rattle. And I thought, I'll get to the tennies, I'd get up the staircase, and I'd run along the landing, won't catch. So I got to the tennies, and I ran up the stairs, and I thought to myself, this is the end staircase. You can't get onto the veranda. This is just, I knew I was stuck, and it was four stories high. And I thought, the hell. And this fella knew I'd made a mistake. And he instead of running upstairs, he started walking. And I stood at the top of the stairs going, it's getting closer, getting closer. And he did, as he got closer, when he got to the top of the stairs, he just got me, little thieving little bastard. Took the money off me, give me a good eye, and he really did, because in them days he could hit kids and nobody would take any notice. Took me up to the police station, and the cop gave me another smack over the head. You know what? I'm not kidding. I was walking around at one time with my hand on my head all the time, and people must have thought I was deformed. It was all the cracks I was getting. I was ducking, putting my hand up, always ducking. And my dad come to get me out of the police station.
I know what's coming now. I know what's coming. Another crack.
I got another one. Yeah. Well, I didn't just get that. That was the first time that I took out a hiding. By this time, we were in 268, posh place. And a man made me get up. I went to bed that night. My dad came to bail me out of the police station. Only 11. Was it 12? No, it was 12. I was 12 by then. And I went over. He got me up in the morning, 6 o'clock, as usual, to go and get a loaf of bread. Went and got the loaf of bread, come back, and my dad was waiting for me in the front room. And he just grabbed me. My mum said, he pinched that lady. Girls have got to go to school up there, and they all know that he's stolen that charity box. Well, my dad had a coat hanger in his hand, a big coat hanger, heavy coat hanger, and he battered me. And when I say battered, if that had been done in this day and age, or even in the 60s, or the 70s,
prison sentence.
It would have been a prison sentence for him. I was black, and really black and blue. It was a minute to get away from him, and I was got out the front door, and he was stood at the top of the steps, and I remember shouting that I hated him. I hate you, I hate you. And I just seen this half a house brick by the front wall, and I picked it up and I slung it with such force. He closed the door just in time, and the thud that came out of that brick. And he opened the door and he just looked down at me. He never said anything. I hate you. But there was a big dent in that door for the rest of the time that I lived in that house. There was a big dent in that door. It wasn't only a reminder to me. I think it was a reminder to my dad what he'd done. And that was the first real hiding that I'd had of that. But that was when I ran away from home. That's when I'd had enough, and I ran away. Didn't run far, I only ran to the tenements. But they had shelters there, air raid shelters, what they had for during the war. And there was a hole in the wall in one of the shelters, and I used to crawl in there. And I would stay there until all the kids everywhere, it was getting a bit dark. Then I'd get out and I'd walk over to Porky's flat. He lived on the first floor. I'd walk over to Porky's flat, and I'd just tap on the window where he was, and he'd come up the door and let me in, and I'd get underneath his bed and I'd lie there till early in the morning, and I'd go out and get back in the shelter again. And I stayed there for a week in that shelter.
Is it?
Yeah, I stayed there for a week. And nobody even bothered. Nobody bothered.
Didn't even look for it.
My mum came to get me after about a week. She knew where I was, she just left me there. And the next hiding I got, really, really bad hidings I'm talking about. I mean, I got hit all the time, but the really bad ones, when I was 15, just before I went to Borstal, I made a cup of tea. And my brother Frank came down the stairs, always drinking. He was must have been in his 30s. I said, give us that, you. I said, well, I'll just make it on. And he pushed me against the wall. And as I slid down the wall, he smashed me in the teeth with his boot. and I knocked all my front hanging, they were hanging down. Our Sheila and the girls were screaming. And I had to go down to the dental hospital. I spent all night in the house waiting. With my teeth hanging out, stuck to the nerves, just hanging on by the nerves. I was in agony. And I went to the dental hospital the next morning. And these fellas just took all the nerves out and left me with all the broken teeth. He said, you'll have to come back and get them fixed at another time. But I was going to court over another thing, which I'll tell you about again because it's bad enough for tonight, isn't it?
Yeah.